Welcome to the July CaTS webinar presented by the Cyberinfrastructure Enhancement Key Component Activity, or CEKCA for short, of the Louisiana Clinical and Translational Science Center, also known as the CaTS Center for short. So we'll use those abbreviations instead of all those syllables. My name is David Alexander. I'm the director of the CEKCA. Today I have a brief topic to present, which I hope you'll find helpful, and that is multi-factor authentication and REDCap. This is a new feature to us. It's not new to the product, but new to us, which we are rolling out on a new instance of REDCap here at Pennington Biomedical, primarily as a security feature, and that's going to help us better safeguard our REDCap resources. Please ask any questions you might have in the chat window, or you can save them for later if you like, or you can email the email address on the screen, info@lacats.org, or redcap@lacats.org. Either of those email addresses will get to me. I'll do my best to answer whatever we receive today during the webinar, and if I have to, I'll chase down an answer for you and get back to you later if I can't answer your question today. So let's go ahead and get started. So why are we talking about using multi-factor authentication? Well, phishing attacks are in the news every day. They're on the rise. These are just a few headlines that I picked up from some tech sites this morning. Shared email messages are being targeted by attackers. OneDrive, the Microsoft product OneDrive, phishing is on the rise. So exploits that try to get folks to allow shares or log in probably to Microsoft services can contain malicious payloads or may just try to capture your credentials. Mobile phishing via SMS, so login pages are being sent to people via text messages that appear to be legitimate. Fake login pages, we see these a lot coming to our help desk that encourage people to log in. They look just like the pages they log into every day. HTTPS protocol, we've always warned folks to look for HTTPS in URL names to provide some level of confidence. Now hacking sites are using HTTPS for the same reason, to look legitimate. And then some of the most or more respected login pages, Microsoft, PayPal, and Netflix, those are being the most impersonated. So things that you're very interested in keeping up to date, you're being asked to log in different ways. And all of these are ways that hackers can gain access to your user ID and password. So what sort of insurance can we use to protect our data, the PHI that we have in our resources against attacks like this? Safeguarding data is our #1 priority, and data breaches are what we're most concerned about protecting against. If credentials, if logon IDs and passwords are lost, that can lead to a data breach, and we're most interested in protecting against that. So multi-factor authentication is one way to safeguard against this. With multi-factor authentication in place, a logon ID and password are not enough to log into a resource. A second factor is also needed, and that's the reason we're implementing it. So what exactly is multi-factor authentication? These definitions came from Wikipedia, and you'll hear these two terms used interchangeably, multi-factor and two-factor. And really, the difference is just in the number. Multi-factor authentication is, or MFA, is an authentication method where access is granted only after a user presents 2 or more pieces of evidence that allows them to successfully authenticate. Two-factor is the exact same, except it requires only 2. So MFA is 2 or more, 2FA is exactly 2. And so that's why they're used interchangeably, because they do define the same idea. So what are these factors that we're talking about? Well, what everyone's most familiar about, there's 3 types of authentication factors. The first one is the most common, and it relies on knowledge or something you know. So these are items that are commonly used, and if they're written down in a notebook or on a sticky note next to your PC, they could be very easily compromised. So those would include the login and password, answers to security questions about an account, or a PIN code. That's one type of factor. The next group of factors is based around possession, or something that you have. So in this case, it would be a telephone that only you answer, your personal smartphone, perhaps an app that's on a smartphone that you carry, such as an authenticator app, or a real hardware key. If you're familiar with YubiKey, that's an actual key that looks a little bit like a USB memory key. And when you log in, you actually supply that hardware key that proves that this is you. You've registered that as a second factor. I mentioned authenticator apps. So just in case you've never used an authenticator app, it's what's pictured here at the top of this something you have area of the screen. An authenticator app is produced by either Google or Microsoft. They're associated with a user, and that app polls a server maintained by Google or Microsoft and supplies a 6-digit access code, which is then trusted by the app as a second factor. These apps are more secure than SMS messages because they are encrypted, and to date they have not been hacked or the target of hacking as much as SMS messages, which are seen as less secure. For us today, we'll be talking about the authenticator applications as well as SMSs. Those are two methods that REDCap supports. Right now, REDCap does not support the YubiKey. I imagine it will eventually, but for now it doesn't. Finally, the third set of factors that are available are inherents, or something you are. So these are becoming more common. They're biometric type means, such as facial recognition, fingerprint scanning, or retina scanning. And none of these are currently supported out the box by REDCap, so we won't be using those. But when you hear about multi-factor authentication, we're talking about different members of these sets. So, like I said, we'll focus on the first two, something you know and something you have, as they are supported by REDCap. So how does this work with REDCap? Well, you begin the same way as you ordinarily do, by entering in your username and password. No difference on the REDCap login screen. But after successfully authenticating with that combination, you see a second screen, the second factor screen, and it presents you with a number of choices which you can use to verify that this is in fact you. Now, this assumes that you have supplied in your REDCap profile a telephone number, and that telephone number identifies you and is the means by which these next steps will take place. To utilize the Google Authenticator will actually require another step to set up that Google authentication path between your app and REDCap. But let me show you what it looks like for SMS. So at this dialog, if you select the SMS message option, REDCap will ask you to enter in a 6-digit code, which will come to your telephone in the form of just a standard text message. So this 6-digit code, in this case 552548, you simply enter that into the SMS message dialog box and submit it, and that's all it takes. These 6-digit codes typically expire within a few minutes, so it's important that you do this in a timely fashion. You can't take this code and use it tomorrow, for example. Which is probably best. You want the freshest code, if you will. You don't want this sticking around, since it is, in a way, it's as powerful as your username and password. If you chose to use a phone call, REDCap will actually, using the Twilio text messaging service, which we've used in the past, it will actually use Twilio's text-to-speech API to call you on your phone and give you a message. I'll play the message now. If it doesn't come through clearly, I can add it later in the recording. But here's what it would sound like.
If you were expecting this call, press any key on your phone's keypad. Otherwise, please hang up.
And then you're allowed.
Thank you.
So that's just another way. If you don't want to rely upon a smartphone, you can rely upon a landline or a smartphone. So it can be a cell phone or a landline, whichever you prefer. You can make either one available as another factor. Then finally, the Google Authenticator, if you select that, very much like the SMS message, you'll be asked to enter in a 6-digit code. You open up your Google Authenticator app where you've already configured a connection to REDCap, enter in the 6-digit code, and keep in mind this is again that freshness indicator in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen that tells you how long this 6-digit code is valid. And in the Authenticator apps, I think it might only be 60 seconds, so these recycle themselves very quickly. Once you've entered in that Google Authenticator code, that's it. You're through to the REDCap portal, and what you have done behind the scenes is obtain a lease that says this is now a trusted connection that REDCap will trust you for a configurable number of days. Currently, we're using 10 days, but you won't be asked again to use REDCap multi-factor authentication again for 10 days from this device via this network. I think that's important to point out. So if you go through multi-factor authentication with your cell phone at home, you would have to authenticate. Then if you go to your notebook, you would have to authenticate again. But then after that, those two connections from those networks would not be asked to re-authenticate for another 10 days. So it's not overly invasive. It's just one more step to make sure you are who you say you are and to safeguard those credentials and our data. So what should you expect from this change? We're phasing this change in within our instance, but if you were to implement this on another instance of REDCap, what should you expect? Well, for public surveys, they don't require any authentication to use them. There's really no change. That behavior is the same. Those surveys are available no matter what network you're connecting to, because you want your research subjects or target users to reply to those surveys easily. So there's really no change at all when you're using your public survey. There's also a concept within REDCap of a whitelist where you can whitelist certain networks and say these are trusted networks. Everyone coming from this network is legitimate. We don't expect any sort of hacking to come from our internal network. So in our case, we've whitelisted our Pennington physical network to protect so that MFA is not used. And so then if you're signing into the REDCap portal from within that trusted network, MFA does not kick in. There's really no change there either. But if you are signing into the REDCap portal with your username and password from outside the trusted network, and you can add several if your network is this is really IP range based. If you're reaching it from your home, let's say a coffee shop, your cell phone via a data connection, not a Wi-Fi connection that we would know about, anything like that, then MFA will kick in, and you'll need to go through the steps that I showed you just to log in. And again, for the length of that lease, you won't have to use MFA again. So it's not a lot of work to use MFA. It's just one extra step really to authenticate. And what it protects against is, and we've seen these before, where a username and password might be written on a sticky note. The sticky note gets lost somewhere. That username and password from outside of our network is useless if MFA is in place, because they can't gain access to that second factor. So that's really the gist of what MFA is about with REDCap. It's impressive to be included in the REDCap product. I'm always amazed at the features that are within REDCap, and we'll be rolling this out to more and more instances and using it more in the future. So I know I just covered a lot of content, and it's new. So if you have any questions about what I showed, please go ahead and ask away. I'll do my best to answer them, or I'll take notes and get back to you in another webinar. I haven't seen any questions come up in the chat area. Okay. Well, not seeing any questions. Again, you can certainly email us at info@lecats.org or redcap@lecats.org if you have questions about MFA, or if you have some future topic that you'd like to see. This is not limited to REDCap. Really, any LeCats service, we're happy to give the floor to any LeCats service to showcase what they provide. If you could take a moment to fill out the REDCap feedback survey that I have a link to there on screen, I'd appreciate it. We have some training resources which we keep at lecats.org/REDCap training. If you don't have access to a REDCap instance, but you'd like to see if REDCap is for you, you can apply for a free 1-week demo of REDCap at redcapdemo.vanderbilt.edu, and then you can sort of kick the tires, see if it might suit your needs. Again, there are email addresses, and we have an ever-growing library of resources at our YouTube channel. lecats.org/YouTube will get you there, and this video will also show up there probably sometime tomorrow. So if no one has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for wrap us up for July, and we will see you next month in August. Thanks so much for joining us today.